My colleagues will excuse me for standing here. It's because the control to some slides that I want to show you is here. Madam Chairman, I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be known as Philip's father. It's a great distinction. I hope it continues. I'm also pleased that our former mayor, Mr. Johnson, a close personal friend, is here, because I think more than anyone else, he taught Dallas to dream. More than teaching us to dream, he taught us to work. And more than teaching us to work, he taught us to work with patience and good sense and with continued courage. A truly remarkable person. This is the Arts District. I was appointed as coordinator for the Arts District by the mayor and the council, without salary, without staff, without office, without portfolio, without authority, and practically without influence, except that I happen to be a doctor, and people generally in our society, fortunately, are somewhat respectful of doctors. I had one perk. I have a sticker that lets me park in the basement of City Hall, a very important status symbol in our government. My assignment was to take this 60-area district and create for it the finest arts district in the world. To give you some idea of the challenge involved, this is 60 acres of downtown Dallas. When fully developed, the land alone will be worth $2.5 billion. The buildings will add another $2.5 billion. There will be 10 million square feet of space. 1/3 of all the space in downtown Dallas presently existing will be recreated in this district. That despite the fact that half the land is in public hands and half the land is in private hands. If we look at the district then as it exists now, you can see it's not really something the tourists come to Dallas for. So we were to take this, what you see here, and transform it to this. This is the Sasaki plan, beautiful landscaping, a widened 100-foot wide boulevard, various setbacks and height controls, city ordinances, which now designate what you can and cannot do. When it is finally built, it will look like this. That's 10 million square feet of office space, a total project cost in excess of $5 billion, and we expect to do that in the next 10 to 15 years. And this morning, I'm pleased to tell you, as Eddie Bernice did, at 10 o'clock we broke ground for the concert hall, a major step forward. This district will also contain the following elements. It will contain as a major anchor on one end of Flora Street that starts the district, the new Dallas Museum of Fine Arts. It will contain, halfway down the district, the Dallas Symphony, for which we broke ground this morning, a building designed by I.M. Pei. It also contains the Guadalupe Cathedral. It contains the Adams Magnet High School, the First United Methodist Church, the legal foundation of BELO, and major developers. Now, if you're faced with this as your challenge, what in the world do you do to solve this? Well, I think I've already indicated to you, you try to build a team. And you build a team around common problems that influence everyone, because everyone can talk about their problems. If you don't believe it, ask a patient if they have headaches sometime, or ask your friend if they have headaches. Everybody has headaches. You can start a conversation with anybody by just asking the last time they had a headache. So we had to find out what the headaches were. Well, I've already told you, they're Flora Street and they're parking. Now, who's involved in that? And how do you deal with who's involved in it? First of all, the city's involved in it. Now, my deal with the mayor was that I could call him day or night, Saturday, Sunday, off the golf course, at any time that I felt necessary to do so in the interest of the Arts District, with a clear understanding I would speak to no member of the council unless spoken to, that was his problem. In this affair, I have called the mayor exactly 3 times, each time with the result that I wanted, and I'm pleased to tell you that's what leadership is all about. Secondly, you have to understand that the city manager is just exactly what that word says, a manager. Managers coordinate activities, they cause activities to be happen, but they do not do them. Don't go to the city manager unless you want something coordinated in a broad way. Where you go is to the assistant city manager, and he's there because his job is to do the work, and with his staff, he does the work. So on a workaday basis, you don't talk to the mayor and you don't talk to the city manager. Those are big cannons. You don't want to shoot big cannons off. In the first place, you're never sure where they'll go. And in the second place, they can backfire and kill you. So you work with the troops. And you work with the troops by taking your coat off and working in their style, on their turf, with their problems, until you understand them and they understand you and you get along. Secondly, you have the developers. The developer doesn't want to talk about anything. He wants to do something. And if you don't let him do something, he's not a developer. He's like a surgeon. A surgeon doesn't operate, he's not a surgeon. They get up in the morning, they operate. That's it. Don't operate, send them to medicine. We're surgeons. The developer is that way. He wants to operate. He wants to operate early in the morning and all day long and twice on the weekend if he can. So you got to give those tigers something to do. You don't want to talk to them. You want to say, tell me yes or no, this or that. Yes, no, okay, we'll go that way. And that's about how long it lasts. Then you have the churches. The churches are extremely sensitive to public opinion, as they should be. They're extremely cautious by their nature, and you have to go and make friends with the churches because they're important to you and to the district, and you must enlist their aid and their leadership and their enlightenment, and you must rely on their spiritual integrity when you talk about creating people places and spiritual places and why, and therefore they have a role on the team, and they play it very well. The lawyers are as interesting as the others. Like faculties, they don't want to make decisions. Like faculties, they do not originate things. Like faculties, they like committees. And like committees, they like committees best that don't do anything. They're a very special case, and you just have to accept that and do the best you can with them. Generally speaking, the best you can do with them is to threaten them from across the street with a powerful developer. Then you come to the symphony. What do symphonies do? They make music. They talk music. They think music. They eat music. Their architects are musical. Their acousticians are musical. Their board is musical. That's got nothing to do with planning. We're trying to put together $5 billion worth of buildings and land. Well, bless their souls, that's the one thing that saved them. Because if they'd really understood what we were doing and trying to swap land for them, they would have been so horrified they'd rolled up their shoes and gone home. Instead of that, they passed a bond issue and are now raising $40 million, all out of faith. And that's remarkable. And it's because of the nature of the symphony, and if you understand that, you know that the symphony belongs not on second base or in left field. The symphony belongs at shortstop. That's what they do, and they do it well. Then you have the planners. Now, in order to get something like this done, clearly I'm not qualified to plan it. Very few people are. It's the biggest urban downtown design in the United States by a factor of 4. I've just come back from a national conference in Washington discussing such things around the country, and you know what the criticism was? Dallas, you're out of your mind. It's too big. Even in Texas, it's too big. You will never get away with that. Well, we are going to get away with it because we're determined. The planners are a special breed, like the others. And how do you deal with them? Very easy. You take the planner to every single property owner and you sit down with him and you make him stay there until he listens to everything that property owner has to say. And then you send him away and say, plan it. You bring him back, and this time you make him talk to all the adjacent property owners, 2 together, and you say, I want you to listen to what his problem is and his problem is because they're different, and your plan's got to solve both their problems in a coherent way. You got 3 weeks, come back. They come back, this time you make them plan with the whole 1/3 of the district with the property owners, and then you go down the district in thirds, and then when they come back with the final plan, you get everybody together, and by this time everybody's so sick and tired of you planning and helping and talking and so forth that they say, we did it. And they approve the plan. Then you have the problem of going to City Hall to figure out how to get an ordinance passed. Now let me tell you, if you think it's easy to get major developers of the type and stature that we have in the Arts District to agree to an ordinance that limits what they can do, you think again. However, if you make them plan for a year, then pretty soon they've got such an investment they want to protect it, and they get more interested in having an ordinance because they don't know who the next guy is going to sell his property to and what impact that's going to have on theirs, and they think to myself, I better get an ordinance. How do you get them to draw an ordinance? Well, you have to be a little Machiavellian to do that, but that's okay, that's part of the game. What you do is you get the city to draw up the ordinance. Now, that's a wonderful exercise. City planners love that. They get out all the books, they read chapter 3, oh, that paragraph's good, put that in. They get out chapter 10, ooh, that's a lovely paragraph, put that in the ordinance. And pretty soon you've got a document that thick that no one can live with. You say, thank you, city, that's a wonderful job, it's just great, I'll give it to the developers. You give it to developers, what are you doing, doctor? You're out of your mind giving us this. I said, you don't like that ordinance? Well, I'm surprised. I'll tell you what you do. Get your lawyers and draw up the ordinance you like, and I'll give it to the city and see that we get it passed. Oh, they said, that's fine. Well, they called their lawyers, and much to my astonishment, the lawyers had a great deal of trouble drawing the ordinance because their professional lives have been spent cracking ordinances, not creating. They're like good safe crackers. They're damn good at cracking ordinances. They can find loopholes in ordinances that bird dogs couldn't find. But you try to get them to create an ordinance and watch what happens. They argue with each other. Well, you can't put that in. That's too general a term. Well, how are you going to say it? Well, I don't know how to say it. Well, what are you going to do? Well, I don't know. We had 5 of the best lawyers in this city try to draw that ordinance. It took them 3 months. By that time, the owners were so disgusted with them, they took the ordinance and they said, we'll take it to the council, doctor. We want to deal with the council. We got it. You do it. I did it in 3 minutes. The toughest ordinance in Dallas, Texas ever proposed was passed without dissent from a single council member or comment, without dissent in a public meeting from a single citizen or property owner, and it was all over. Now, that is the result. That is the result of a huge amount of planning and successful planning. And let me tell you the last element, and I've saved it for last because it is among the most important. It is the press. The press, as everyone in public life knows, can literally make you and break you. They drove 2 presidents from office. They can start and stop wars, as we found out in the Spanish-American War. They can do a great many things for and to you. And the trick is to be sure they do it for you. And that's not as hard as you would think. How do you do that in this? Well, since I know nothing about it and I'm newly appointed, I've got a license to be dumb. That's a valuable license. You can't buy them. You have to sort of fall into them. And that license lets you go to the editor of the 2 newspapers and say, fellas, I'm a professor in the medical school. Worse than that, I'm a doctor. Worse than that, I'm in big trouble because the university has lent me to the city for this purpose. What do I do with the press? Oh, they said, that's nothing to that. We're so glad you came. You just stand up and be positive and act like you know what you're doing and run meetings in a crisp way and come to decisions, and they'll all be on your side. And by the way, take a couple of them out to lunch, and here are the 2 you take out to lunch and make friends with them because they love to be taken to lunch. I said, that's wonderful. They said, I'll tell you what else we'll do. We'll call them all together and put you on the stage and you explain your story, and I'm sure that it will work. And both newspapers were kind enough to do that for me. It was an extremely valuable piece of advice. I did take them to lunch. I did stroke them properly. I did tell them what I was doing. You must always have an answer. But I also had, unknown to them, one of the best public relations men in Dallas on my permanent telephone line. And that man advised me at every step of the way what was coming at me from the press and what the answers were. And once we got that in place, and once we got strung out, I can tell you absolutely truly, I believe we've generated the most astounding rapport with the public, which was the name of the game, for support of the Arts District. It reminded me of what a college fraternity brother of mine said. He said one time, you know, I don't believe my girl loves me. And another brother said, do you ever tell her that you love her? Oh, hell, he says, I tell her I love her so much I'm beginning to believe it myself. And we actually had the press so primed and working on our side that we began to think we were pretty damn good ourselves. And that this really was going to work. And it did. So it can have a mutually reinforcing thing. Well, I've taken too much of your time. I appreciate the opportunity. And again, I want to thank Mayor Johnson for this wonderful legacy. Thank you.